Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Olena, and Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform continues its operation today. It's been 9 years of the war, and it's day 375 of the full-scale invasion of the Russian aggressor in our land, and we will be talking about the utmostly important draft law. I want to introduce our speaker today. It's Olena Shulyak, the chair of the Servant of the People Party, chair of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on State Building, Local Governance, Regional and Urban Development. Miss Olena, good afternoon. Good afternoon, dear all. It's been almost a year, well, it's already second year of the full-scale invasion. We understand our state ended up in front of a significant challenge. More than 300,000 people submitted their applications through DIA due to the destruction of their properties by the occupiers, and the logical response by the government was the draft law 7198, which was adopted in second reading. And on the 23rd of April, so let's talk about this draft law and to what extent will it be a powerful support for the Ukrainians whose property was destroyed, and is it going to become a fundamental law for reconstruction of our country? Yes, really, as of today, 335,145 applications were submitted. We understand that this figure is not final. It's only what our citizens added to the database through DIA and what we can analyze for the time being. And now we see that there are three regions, the said leaders, Donetsk, Kiev and Kharkiv regions, with the largest scale of destruction. More than 1 million citizens of a country were left without their homes, without roofs above their heads, and we think that it's utmostly important that the draft law 7198 was adopted. It's due to be signed by the head of the parliament, and then it's about to be signed by the president, and the law defines two months for the government to develop relevant laws, and we hope this law to start taking effect in May and start working effectively. The government has 17 billion hryvnias for the time being to be allocated for such compensations. Those are the first monies that were coming to the state from the arrested assets of the Russian Federation. I hope that the rest of the funds that will be arrested abroad will be forwarded for the mitigation of the armed aggression of Russian Federation, and they will be paid to the citizens without waiting for reparations in compensation for their destroyed property. What is envisaged by the law? It contemplates that it's not only DIA and not only the state portal that can be used for applications. The citizens can also use the help of notaries and the centers of social protection. We hope the centers for social protection in the territories where the occupied territories and where it's difficult to get to the areas where the centers for administrative support are available, so that every citizen whose property was destroyed could use this option and to add all the information required by the state to get prepared for the mechanism of compensation directly. The citizens whose property was destroyed, first of all, it's only the real estate that falls under the compensation standards. We know that businesses were affected, commercial real estate, but due to the limited nature of resources of the government, there was a resolution undertaken that it's only individuals who will receive the compensation, and when the government will have opportunity to compensate to the businesses, they will consider such mechanisms. The property which is falling under compensation is the property destroyed during the warfare, and the applications will be accepted within 1 year after the end of the martial law. And we're understanding that there might be situation arising related to the mining, and we contemplated the opportunity for the citizens that the property that can be destroyed, that may be destroyed after the end of the active phase of the war, may be compensated for too. So the sequence of actions contemplated by the law is as follows. The citizens can submit their applications through DIA, Centers for Administrative Support, Notary, and the bodies of social protection. To have this application verified, the application should be verified by a committee created at the bodies of local governance. The committees will be created at all communities where the properties are destroyed, and those committees will have technical role. They will organize expertise and verification. They will provide for technical inspection of such buildings, and we understand that not all of the people may have documents on hand, and the committee will be able to apply to other bodies of local governments to obtain necessary paperwork for verification of property rights. All those committees will work with the registers of the destroyed property, and all operations related to compensations will be executed with the help of the digital instruments, and the digital certificate will be created in the register for compensation of this or that family. The register is already created, and the owner of this register is the Ministry of Reconstruction. It's been administered by the Ministry of Digital Transformation through the technical administrators, and today more than 500 communities were registered and started working with the register. More than 10,000 objects of real estate are registered there, and meanwhile there is time. Meanwhile the government is developing relevant resolutions. There is a technical possibility to get registered and to add all the information about the damaged or destroyed property. The resolutions of the committee will be approved by the local governments or the military governor of a settlement. There will be a sequence, a queue for compensation. The queue will be created in each community separately, and for certain categories of citizens, like families with disabled, the families of the military, and the families with multiple children, they will be the priority queue. Those who will not be able, or the recipients of the compensation will not be able to receive the money directly, and in relation with the apartment which cannot be repaired, or the apartment block which can be repaired, or if those are the private buildings, the people will either be able to receive the dwelling certificate or the money that can be used for procurement of the construction materials or construction works. The people receiving compensation will not be able to acquire the non-residential real estate, because the certificates can only be used for residential property. The property which will be acquired in that way will not, the citizens will not be able to sell it within the next 5 years. The citizens of foreign countries will not be able to use the mechanisms, and as well as businesses, they will not be able to use the mechanism of the compensation. Also, if people are listed on some sanction lists of the government and were convicted of the crimes against state, and there is a number of other restrictions which cover the citizens who will not be able to receive the compensation. Talking about the destroyed property or damaged property, the draft law contemplates two options. The mechanism worked with the local government when the monies were allocated from local budgets, and the regional heads we're organizing the process of repair of the damaged properties, and this mechanism will be laid as fundamental for further repair of the damaged properties in the regions. And the law also contemplates an option for the citizens to receive certain funds for repair of such damaged property. We hope that when this transparent mechanism will start operating, we will be joined by our international partners, different financial institutions. We will be joined by the international donors to help Ukrainians obtain their roofs over their heads, and the only desire, the top priority desire, is the victory for all Ukrainians, and the second to that is the job to feed their families, while the third is to have the roof above their heads for the hundreds and thousands of Ukrainians who lost their properties. They will be able to use that mechanism and to get compensated for their property without waiting for reparations from Russian Federation. Miss Olena, the question that I cannot help but asking, that for Kiev, Kharkiv regions where different which are currently deoccupied and the commissions may start working there, but talking about the cities which are currently not occupied yet, like Mariupol or Donetsk, Luhansk regions, is it going to be possible for the people to obtain compensation here? Yes, it will be possible because the territories are temporarily occupied. Obviously, the citizens will be able to obtain the compensation. We were talking to the mayor of Mariupol, and we were talking to military governor of Donetsk region, which has problems with temporary occupation now. The government will develop relevant procedure to use different mechanisms, using the modern measures like drone footage to confirm the fact of destruction of the property, and the people who were forced to leave Mariupol or other cities temporarily occupied now and whose property is destroyed, they will be able to receive compensation. I didn't mention that the law contemplates the option for such people to pick the dwelling regardless of their prior residence. We were talking to the owners of the private buildings. The larger fraction of them want to rebuild in the same land plot where their property was destroyed, but there are people who would like to move due to their jobs which were forced to be relocated, so we let them pick the new place of residence by themselves. So there will be a confirmation from local governance that the property of the citizens was destroyed. Yes, there will be a special procedure because not everybody will be able to add the relevant documents to DIA, using the drone footage, because the areas would be may be inaccessible where such damaged property is located. So for the temporarily occupied territories there will be one procedure, and for the rest of the territories, like the occupied territories, there will be a different procedure. And for the Ukrainians who are currently in the occupied territories and who did not wait for this opportunity to get compensated and who decided to start rebuilding their damaged property at their own cost, what about them? Well, don't forget that we will have the mechanism of reparations. We thank all the Ukrainians who were able to start rebuilding their properties at their own cost, but there are hundreds, thousands of people who don't have this opportunity so far, so we will be helping them as the government to the maximum extent possible. Thank you, dear colleagues. If you have any questions on the floor, please introduce yourself and proceed. Good afternoon, Yulia Bakunova, Ukrinform. Could you please tell us how to identify the cost of this compensation certificate? What are the criteria? The assessment of the property or the total area? Well, thank you for this question. As the authors of the draft law, we had a discussion. We had some limitation. It was 150 square meters to be compensated. In the second reading, we removed that restriction. So if the damaged property is, regardless of its total area. We analyze the information applications through submitted through DIA. We see that it's less than 100. The majority of such properties are less than 100, smaller than 150 square meters. We were talking with the heads of the parliamentary committees, so we removed that limitation of 150 square meters. We were discussing the issue of assessment. When the property is destroyed, it's very difficult to exercise the fair assessment to understand the real cost of the property. So within 2 months, the government will develop the relevant resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, which will define the cost for every region of Ukraine of per 1 square meter, because we understand that the cost of the property in the regions is different, and we will analyze all the market database of the real estate, and our task is to have the cost of 1 square meters defined by Cabinet of Ministers to be the closest possible to the market level. If there are any more questions, please. Good afternoon, Dmitro Didora, Espresso TV channel. Is there a mechanism contemplated if a person lost their property rights document or the property was not privatized, if it was owned by the government, how this person may prove that that property was belonging to them? And is there such an option contemplated by the draft law? Yes, there were discussions with that regard, and the committees to be created at the bodies of the local governments, they will be able to communicate quickly with the different government bodies. They will be able to obtain information from different government registers in a way more rapid way than individuals would be able to do it themselves. And in many cases, if it's impossible to find documents, or the documents are not in the registers, and it's difficult to confirm that you are an owner of such destroyed property, there will be a court system, judicial system used for obtaining of such confirmations. We had a lot of proposals that this information may be corroborated by some expert organizations or bodies of local governance, but regarding the confirmation of the property rights, everything will be done through court decisions. Thank you, Ms. Olena, for this briefing. Oh, we have more questions on the floor. Well, another question: is there a situation considered when a person is an internally displaced person? They lost their properties and they acquired new property at their new place of residence. Would such citizens be able to obtain any compensation? So for the people, no matter where they reside, whether they live in Ukraine or saving their children from the threat they go abroad, if their properties were destroyed, they will be able to receive such compensation. The government will not check whether such citizens are able to obtain new properties. The government cannot inspect the living conditions. We will provide for the compensation options to the most extent possible without dividing Ukrainians into categories. So what are the conditions for such transfers? Well, you listed some categories of citizens who will not be able to receive compensation. So it would be more correct probably to say who are able to use these options. They are citizens of Ukraine, individuals, and it's only compensation for destroyed property. And obviously those restrictions that I mentioned, the sanction list or the suspicion of crimes against national security. So do we understand it correct? If a person has a number of apartments, it will not be a barrier to obtain such compensation. We analyzed very meticulously that those applications that were submitted through DIA, we don't see such people among those who applied who have several apartments. We see a lot of destroyed buildings in the rural areas which were destroyed to the ground, and they're impossible to be rebuilt. They should be built from scratch. And the law even contemplates the option for compensation when the non-commissioned buildings were destroyed. But according to the statistics that we observe in India, we didn't witness any such destructions. Well, thank you, Miss Olena. Joining us was Olena Shulyak. Thank you for joining our broadcast. Dear colleagues, our next briefing is in 10 minutes, so stay with us, bear with us. Trust in our armed forces and glory to Ukraine.